YouTubed it.
So this background.
And you take ladies' nylons, those flies no time off and I'm draping, and it really works. I was like, good for YouTube.
Oh, you know what, it's in the pillar. It's in the response. The background section of the item is shorter. But if you go to the actual county response, which is,
What page is that?
Good, okay.
6.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Keith, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. Call the meeting to order. If you would all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker unless additional time is granted by the board chairperson. The Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board uses Lauren as our timing lights. She will keep track of your time and let you know when there's 30 seconds left. And when the time is up, please take your seat. Right now, I'll just let you know that there will be public comment after the agenda items, and then there will be closing public comment. So I will take opening public comment right now.
I want to thank everybody on the advisory board, the staff, the district attorney's office for getting us to this juncture, and not as the subjects today, but the entire policy and how it was derived and all the work and all the effort that's gone into this. Please pass on to our missing person, Mr. Sloan, who has now moved on, and we will certainly get a nice replacement, I'm sure. And I just want to really say thank you to the people that are here that are new today or not familiar. It's really a wonderful process to watch unfold. And again, thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Ellie. Any other opening public comment? And I guess one of us should have mentioned that we have a few missing seats. Keith's on the computer today. Patty's out of the country, and Michael Sloan has stepped down from his position, so we're advertising, I guess, for a new member to be chosen by the Board of County Commissioners. Okay, so I'm going to close opening public comment, and we will move on to approval of the agenda. For possible action, approval of the proposed agenda, the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board reserves the right to take items in a different order to accomplish business in the most efficient manner, to combine 2 or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda or delay discussion relating to items on the agenda. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Lauren.
Second.
Thank you, Keith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Previous minutes for possible action, discussion to approve the draft minutes of the February 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board. Again, I'll take discussion if anyone saw any changes that need to be made. Otherwise, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Keith.
I'll second, but I'd like to fill in Michael's position if I could, please.
Go right ahead.
I'm not going to do it.
I was wondering that.
I'm not going to do it justice, but the minutes are very difficult to transcribe, and so if anyone feels that they really want to know what happened at a meeting, the suggestion is to go to the tape, which is available online.
Okay. So I have a
Was
motion.
that close?
Yep, that's pretty close.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. I think we just had a little discussion.
Mhm.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, 3-0. We will move on to the administrative agenda. The chairperson will read the agenda title into the public record and will have the discretion to determine how the item will be presented. I'm going to present these one at a time, even though they're very similar. Agenda items may be considered ahead of or after the schedule indicated by this agenda. Public comment may be taken on items that are identified for possible action at the discretion of the chairperson. So item number 1, get to my exact page. For possible action, discussion on an appeal filed by Kenneth Burrows, owner of 256 North Benjamin Drive, State Line, Nevada, 89449, APN 1319192100003, VHR permit number 8400817, contesting the revocation of the VHR permit and the imposition of a $1,000 fine for advertising an occupancy that exceeds the permitted occupancy of 10. Code enforcement case number 22-000329. Mr. Strelo, Mr. Burrows, is that you? We will have you make a statement. He'll give his presentation first, and then we'll hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, Ernie Strelo for the record. So this is, as we just heard, related to an appeal of a $1,000 fine and revocation of a VHR permit at 256 North Benjamin Drive. So this will be the county response. It's on page 60 of the packet. And there's also the appellant's response to that in the packet. So, or what we were saying. So the background is appellant Kenneth Burrows is the owner of property located at 256 North Benjamin Drive in State Line, APN 1319192100003. Mr. Burrows held a VHR permit number 8400817, which allowed him to operate the property as a VHR with a maximum occupancy of 10. On or about October 27, 2022, the Douglas County VHR program staff noted that he was advertising an occupancy that exceeded the permitted limit of 10 for the permit. Specifically, he had posted advertisements on vrbo.com listing an occupancy of 20, and he had posted advertisements on Airbnb listing an occupancy of 16. Douglas County issued a notice of violation assessing Mr. Burrows a fine of $1,000 and ordering him to correct the violations. In compliance with the notice of violations, Mr. Burrows did revise his advertisements. Additionally, on or about January 10th, 2023, Mr. Burrows paid the fine of $1,000. However, on or about January 22nd, 2023, less than 2 weeks after paying his fine for the first violation, Mr. Burrows again began advertising an occupancy that exceeded the occupancy limit. Specifically, he listed the property on Airbnb.com with an advertised occupancy of 16 plus. A copy of his Airbnb.com advertisement from January 22nd, 2023 is attached as Exhibit 1 in the packet. Within the body of the advertisement, Mr. Burrows wrote, quote, "Home sleeps 10 adults plus children. Per Fair Housing Act, 18 and under do not count. See Exhibit 1. The advertisements on Airbnb.com also include reviews from occupants and a review from December of 2022, 2 months after the first notice of order was issued. An individual named Henrietta stated, quote, "Ken's stay was awesome for our big group and doggy. We had 16 of us in the place, easily fit all of us and had great amenities. See Exhibit 1. On or about January 31st, 2023, Douglas County issued a second notice of violation to Mr. Burrows, again assessing a fine of $1,000 for advertising and operating above his permitted occupancy limits. Additionally, because this was a second offense within a shorter period of time, Douglas County elected to revoke Mr. Burrows' VHR permit. On or about February 1st, 2023, Mr. Burrows filed his appeal of the county's decision. In his appeal letter, he maintains that he was allowed to advertise an occupancy above 10 because children 18 and under do not count. So the county's response was the $1,000 fine and revocation were justified because Mr. Burrows openly violated the occupancy limitations of the VHR ordinance. The VHR ordinance, chapter 20.622 of the Douglas County Code clearly states that VHR owners must, quote, limit overnight occupancy of the vacation home rental to the specific number of occupancy designated in the permit. And this is referencing 20.622.040 subsection D, number 1. Further, all advertising for a VHR must state the maximum occupancy of the unit. And that's listed in the same code under B. If the maximum occupancy was not included in all forms of advertisement or the occupancy was stated incorrectly, then the VHR permit should be revoked. 20.622.050 subsection I, number 6. The county may also impose a fine of up to $1,000 a day per violation per 20.62.050 subsection F. Here, Mr. Burrows clearly violated the requirements of the VHR ordinance. His permitted occupancy limit was 10. He openly advertised the property as an occupancy of 16 plus. Further, he did actually rent the property to groups of as many as 16 people, as demonstrated by the reviews included with his advertisements. Accordingly, Douglas County was justified in assessing a fine of $1,000 and revoking Mr. Burrows' permit. And I listed the subsection F and I of section 050. That Mr. Burrows engaged in this unlawful conduct mere weeks after being penalized for the same behavior makes the violation all the more egregious and further supports the county's actions. Number 2, children are not exempt from the occupancy limits of the VHR permit or the VHR ordinance. Mr. Burrows argues that he was allowed to advertise above the limits of the VHR permit because children, quote, do not count, i.e. they are exempt from occupancy limitations. This is incorrect. All individuals, regardless of age, count towards the occupancy limitations of a VHR permit and the VHR ordinance. Mr. Burrows was therefore not justified in advertising above the occupancy limits, and the county's actions were proper. The VHR ordinance does not exempt children from the occupancy limits. The VHR ordinance does not support Mr. Burrows' position that children do not count towards occupancy limits. The VHR ordinance does not distinguish between adults and children. It makes no mention of familial status. It does not restrict individuals of any type from occupying a VHR rental property. Rather, the VHR ordinance treats all individuals equally. As a result, all individuals, regardless of age, familial status, or any other trait or characterization, count towards the occupancy limitations set forth in the VHR ordinance. There is no exemptions or exceptions. Accordingly, the VHR ordinance does not support Mr. Burrows' contention that children are exempt from occupancy limitations. And then B, the Federal Fair Housing Act does not apply, and even if it did, it would not work to exempt children from any occupancy limitations. The Federal Fair Housing Act also does not support Mr. Burrows' position. First and foremost, the FHA, Fair Housing Act, does not even apply to short-term accommodations like VHRs. And you can look at number 42, the USC 3604 subsection B code. And second, if the FHA did apply to short-term accommodations, Mr. Burrows has failed to identify why occupancy limitations would violate the terms of the FHA. As noted above, the VHR ordinance treats all individuals equally. There is nothing in the ordinance that prohibits individuals of any particular familial status, race, color, religion, sex, or national origin from occupying a VHR. Accordingly, the FHA does not support Mr. Burrows' position that children do not count towards occupancy limits. Based on the foregoing, the county requests that the VHR board affirm the revocation of Mr. Burrows' permit and the imposition of a $1,000 fine. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Before we take your statement, we need to vote on your standing, which is basically whether we affirm that you are aggrieved and that you're the actual owner of the property. So I will look for a motion from the board here. That would be on page 44, under the recommended motion to find the appellant. I know, Keith, that's something you always pay attention to. Find that the appellant, Kenneth Burrows, was aggrieved by the $1,000 fine and permit revocation and has standing to appeal.
So moved.
Okay. And do I have-
Second.
Thank you. And of course, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
Aye.
you have standing. Mr. Burrows, we will hear from you.
I did kind of combine it together, because I figured they were kind of together.
Both of them together?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right.
That's kind of how I prepared everything, just, I think it's redundant to go back through everything again.
Yeah, because we'll probably.
There's the earnings trailer for the record, so we actually have an addition, it's pretty much the same thing for the other house, except there's additional information on the second home that adds to the problem.
Okay.
there.
So let's,
I'm fine, but we need to bring up the recent history a couple weeks ago with that property,
Okay,
the one on Kingsbury.
yeah,
Okay.
okay, that makes
so
sense.
right now, we'll just be talking about North Benjamin.
Okay,
I mean, as best as you can, and,
yeah, I kind of combine the violation, but yeah, the 2 weeks, yeah,
Okay.
I can address that after that.
okay.
All right, well, first of all, I do want everyone in this room to understand I'm very much pro-police, for ordinances, and very for capitalism. Capitalism in America is really the only system that works in this world, in my opinion, so. I very much respect each and every one of you, and I want to thank you for your service for Douglas County and hearing me out today. I know this is not everyone's, wants to be here today, but I know you guys have put a lot of time and energy into these ordinances, and I respect that fully. I've been watching the VHR meetings, and I feel I have a good idea on where you guys are coming from with everything. Ernie Strello, I think you are being the enforcer, from what I've seen in these meetings here, which I completely understand and can appreciate. And I get some of that aggressive enforcing can cause animosity between the locals and vice versa. I can also understand how that might be burdensome and draining at times, and I respect that. And based on previous litigation towards the county that we've seen and kind of watched over, I do also think that some of the board and you, Mr. Strello, don't always understand the law, which is why you brought AJ Hames in to assist in that. And AJ, from what I've seen through the meetings, you've been a pretty reasonable advisor and try to look at both sides of the entire situation, which I completely appreciate and respect. I do tend to look at both sides as well. I just want you guys to know I do see that. I don't look at this as us versus them situation. We should all work together, not against each other, in my opinion. This goes, of course, for our political environment, but also for the distraught homeowners, that some of these homes might be causing undue stress. I don't know if there's any in here. And the permit holders also having these regulations causing undue stress. So I think everybody's having issues, all the way around through the local area. So I do believe you guys are on the right track with most of these ordinances. Just want to get that on record and just that you note that. Second, I'd like you to know a little bit me and my family here a little bit. My wife Sally back there, we've been together over 12, 13 years now. We have 11-year named Bodie, and we kind of named after Bodie Miller. Bodie currently attends Faith Christian Academy down in Gardnerville and is very active in soccer, basketball, and skiing. I'm originally from Ohio. My wife's from Wisconsin, so our values and morals are pretty sound. My father is a retired rancher and a veterinarian from Kingman, Arizona, and Lewiston, Idaho. My mother is a retired school teacher from Ohio, so she's been in the service industry for a long time. We are longtime locals for the last 16 years, and we do a lot for the community in Douglas County. I own a nonprofit called SaveUnited.org, which helps local businesses and veteran businesses in many ways through consulting and their funding to grow and create jobs for the local economy. This has been a local nonprofit since 2011 here in the Douglas County area. We also own a mortgage business called Mortgages for America, located down here at the bottom of Kingsbury Grade, open since 2011 as well. We specialize in veterans to achieve home ownership through our Homes for Heroes program, which I've been running for almost 27 years from Ohio back to here when we moved 16 years ago. And most of that income does go back to our SaveUnited.com charity. I'm also a head coach and assist in business development for the Battleborn Football Soccer Club. It's been growing here the last 2 years. That's all pro bono work at this point. We've currently got 12 youth teams and are growing rapidly. The club just secured 30 acres in Reno by the Spaghetti Bowl to build a pro soccer stadium for a professional men's and women's team. So it's pretty exciting for all of us around here, but I'm glad to be a part of that. I'm also part owner of Team Whiskey. We started as a local apparel company that's mainly for hunters around the area. But for the last few years, we've been doing large 3D archery shoots. We've done them at Homewood, Big Bear, and now Heavenly this year. So we get 2,000 to 3,000 archers from all over the world. And then we just launched a whiskey brand as well with that. So we're pretty excited about that. It's called the Sportsman's Whiskey, but all of which we donate a good amount of that through the Team Whiskey to local cancer foundations. Give Hope. Pretty much because the founder, Kevin and Justin Stang, their mother died last year during a 4-year bout of cancer, so it was pretty sad. But That was the whole reason for a lot of that. But I'm also getting more involved with WAVE. It's the veteran nonprofit here in Gardner-Minden that helps down and out veterans through many different resources, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. I've been working with Carl a little bit, and they have asked me to join the board on that. So we aren't just some out-of-towners trying to make a buck and not follow regulations and just cause problems. I mean, that's not why we're here. And hopefully that kind of shows that as I go forward with this. So I am going to combine some of these on the properties itself, even though I will address that 2-week thing separately. So we bought 692 Kingsbury Grade in 2010. We were struggling a little bit because I'm in the mortgage business around the 2008-2010 recession. I barely made it happen. Had to just pretty much pull from everywhere I could. After struggling a little bit, with the bills for a couple of years, we began renting it out just on the weekends around 2015 area, and staying in our fifth wheel, a friend's home down the street. After about a year of that, we needed a full-time place, so we ended up buying a home at the Y at the Bonanza Avenue, with hopes to turn that into a vacation rental. I personally remodeled it over a span of 4 years. Me and my wife worked very hard on it. However, when South Lake Tahoe banned the vacation rentals, it started to take the wind out of our sails a little bit. So we're pretty much forced to sell it. So that's for that property. The other one is a 256 North Benjamin. In 2009, her local realtor friend brought it to me. This place was completely gutted. I mean, there was heroin addicts living in there. It was totally it wasn't good for the local economy at all. So we worked with all the fire marshals, the building department down there. We worked real hard to get everything back, all the building permits and fire codes. Me and a few friends personally remodeled that home as well. And that took us, roughly 10 to 12 months to do that. And it was a lot of work. However, prior to purchasing the property, I did speak to Douglas County about that vacation rental permits. And I can't remember the woman's name I was talking to at the time, but that was our plan, and we mentioned how that was supposed to be, we were turning it into a vacation rental. That was our whole plan about it. And they pretty much said, there's no way we'll ever be like California and try to shut these vacation rentals down. She kind of made light of it that Douglas County was never going to be like California. Basically because we're more for capitalism, that kind of things over here. So that was refreshing to hear. So that's why we went ahead with it and did all this, spent all the money, worked all the work. So basically with the rental income and the mortgage income, we were able to more focus on our nonprofit and our pro bono work with these two houses. Now currently in the situation, rates are rising, the mortgages are starting to go down. Stricter regulations with these vacation rentals, they're bringing lower income. And basically these two homes were a big part of me and my wife's retirement plan. So basically again, with this happening, it's taken the wind out of our sails once again. So, which does kind of bring me to the legal aspect of the situation. I do have a little bit of a legal background. I have a legal studies degree. I don't practice. I don't particularly like the whole legal world. It's just not fun for me. So I typically think legal and structure our life around that and our way of thinking. So with that said, I have applied for the opening of the new VHR board spot that is open. I feel I would make a great candidate and committee member to assist in Douglas County and the VHR board in many aspects of the ordinance. My expertise in local knowledge, real estate legal knowledge, and me being pro-fair ordinances would make me a good committee member. Also to mention my expertise in finance and business consulting. I'm very good at understanding profit and loss and balance sheets and aspects of understanding how business flows, and to assist Douglas County, the VHR board, and the permit holders all to come together without any animosity. I just think I could be a good fit for that position. So I just wanted to point that out. So to the legalities, I would like to discuss some ordinances that I do believe could be a liability to the county, possible violations of due process. And per your ordinance of 20.622.060B12 regarding appeals, any VHR owner, this is your ordinance, any VHR owner issued a notice of violation or otherwise issued an adverse decision with respect to the owner's VHR permit or permit application pursuant to this chapter shall have the right to file an appeal with the VHR Advisory Board, which is what we're doing now. The filing of a notice of appeal shall stay all proceedings regarding the notice of violation or adverse decision, including efforts to correct the violation or abate a nuisance, the imposition of a fine, or the suspension or revocation of any permit until the final disposition of the appeal. I just want to put this on record. I believe this is a violation of the 14th Amendment, 42 U.S.C. 1983 due process, and 42 U.S.C. 1988 separate cause of action. Per your own ordinance, or permit revocation should have been put on hold until the disposition of the appeal. This stay of ordinance was not followed due to the direct statements from Ernie Strelo and Bonnie Harwood that I was not allowed to rent our property during the appeal process. And if I did, I definitely wouldn't get our permits back. I even pleaded to allow us to rent to cover our expenses and to pay our local employees. Again, I was told no. Even though I knew this was wrong, I didn't really want to keep fighting it. I still complied, and things are again beginning to struggle for me and my family like it was a few years ago. My family and my employees' families rely on this income from these 2 vacation rentals. I just don't believe this is Douglas County's VHR board's agenda, is to destroy the locals that work hard for this community. I mean, does the VHR board believe it has a right to suspend a revoked license and essentially shut down a business without a formal appeal hearing and a chance to explain the situation, providing it's not a danger to the community, which ours was not? So with that said, I'd like to hear your opinion on that stance and on what I stated above.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just for the record, I would just note that one of the recommendations that this board had submitted for consideration as a possible code revision was to change that section to make it clear that if you do have your permit revoked, that the appeal does stay the revocation. So you would be able to continue renting during the appeal period. That's not how the code reads currently.
Thank you, AJ.
So I think, just for the record, I think the board agrees conceptually with Mr. Burrow's statements, and that was one of the recommendations that was made to the.
Okay.
Well, I did see that in the curtain ordinance, but,
No, it hasn't been adopted yet.
okay. I was not need to go through it.
So I'm going to take it back over here to the board for some questions. If the board members have questions for you or for Mr. Strelo. Keith?
Yes. First of all, Mr. Strelo, the fine you imposed was $1,000, but the fine is allowed to be $1,000 per day. Do you have any idea how many days this advertisement was up?
This is AJ Hames again for the record. I don't know that there was a good record of how many days. There were snapshots in time. For instance, within the packet, you'll see advertisements, I think, from January 22nd. But the way that the county issues fines, they're issued, it wouldn't quite be fair to say, hey, we've been tracking the violation for the past 8 days, so here's a fine of $8,000. Instead, what the county does is they issue the $1,000 fine, and then a subsequent $1,000 fine would begin to accrue after the notice of violation has been delivered to the permit holder. And so in this instance, the $1,000 was imposed on Mr. Burrows, and he subsequently came into compliance. And so there wasn't an additional fine.
Thank you very much for that clarity. Mr. Burrows, I want to kind of separate these issues. First, renting the VHR, this is, so I do understand your point about not being able to appeal this, but the appeal, that was particularly to the renting while the permit had been revoked, correct? Not that you, or are you making that same claim about advertisement?
I'm mainly doing it based on the revocation.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm not completely contesting the fines. That's not really the main reason I'm here today. It's obviously
Okay.
shutting our business down.
Keith, did you have any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, Mr. Burrows, just, can you explain what happened between paying the first fine and then the second issue?
Yeah. Well, I accepted the first fine. What had happened, we were using host B&B. They're a third-party company that handles, or they kind of watch over our pricing and things like that. And I will take some responsibility. I kind of told them to do what they need to do to make as much money as they can. So what they were doing, they were, at nighttime, they were jacking it up. After I found out what was going on, they jacked it up at night and then came back down in the day. And so I went ahead and took responsibility for that. I do talk to a lot of other vacation home renters. So, I mean, we're all part of a big group. And it started coming around about the Fair Housing Act. So that's why the second one, we decided, which I'll get more into with some of my statements here, we decided that might be a good legal avenue without actually going to court and everything else around it. I want to really have a discussion with everybody about it, which I'll get more into here. So.
Anything else, Lauren?
No, not right now, thanks.
It's just troubling to me that you would pay a fine and then make the same mistake again. It doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like, an outright snubbing your nose at the code. And, we're
I get
not
that.
lawyers up here. We're just people that know the code now, and our job is to enforce code violations if they come to us. And it doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room because the code was clearly violated. And it gets down to the ordinance part 010, which is that having a permit is not a right. It is a privilege. So it can be denied or revoked by county staff for an egregious violation. So I am having a difficult time and you sound like a wonderful person that I love to work with because of your community service, but to turn around and violate the code knowingly is wrong, and as a board member of this board, I can't overlook that.
I totally understand and agree.
Any other comments on this from anybody on the board? Because I can take public comment on.
Well, I have a lot more to discuss.
On this address?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot more actually, which is going to address a lot of your questions.
Okay, well, that's what I would like to do, is address what we're here for. I'm glad you gave us your background so that we have it for the next one, but,
Yeah, we're more into the nitty-gritty of the legal aspect at this
okay.
point.
Okay,
So, yeah, I mean, I do understand the commissioner has the ability to revoke a license if the home is a liability to the community. I do ask our homes, how were we a nuisance or liability to the community if you've never had a complaint in 8 years? Our revocations were all based on advertising, and I wasn't given any opportunity to correct it. Which I understand your question, your concern, and I somewhat agree with you on that. But we were just immediate revocation. There was no discussion, there was no email, there was no, hey, we have a different opinion on this. I do believe the circumstance was a little ill will and biased on an immediate revocation. And the reason I think that is because the attorney that is representing a lot of people out of Reno, Chris Rusby, did send a VHR board letter with recommendations to comply with the Fair Housing Act. So I do believe that when you guys saw that advertising, and immediate was like, nah, he's trying to circumvent this, he's trying to trick the system. I completely see where you guys are coming from. I completely do.
And Madam Chair, can I interject?
yes, please.
I will say that Mr. Burrows' attorney did contact, I think it was the Board of County Commissioners in December, and he wrote a letter setting forth his opinion that the Fair Housing Act applied to the VHR program. And there wasn't a response. The Board of County Commissioners didn't, at that time, elect to respond to the letter from Mr. Rusby.
Yeah, well, Danny Darkanian did.
Oh, he may have personally.
Yeah, he
There
did.
wasn't an official response from the board as a whole.
Okay.
And so there wasn't an acceptance of Mr. Rusby's argument or anything along those lines, but the county did receive a letter, I think in December.
Yeah.
Mr. Haynes, that is the one in the package, correct?
I think that is
Yes.
a copy of the
Yeah,
one
I
that was
think it's
sent,
in
that
the
was,
package.
I did include
There was
that.
one in December in the package from an attorney in Reno, Ruth, I can't remember the name, Rufy or something?
Chris Rusby?
Page 58.
Chris Rusby?
Yeah, Rusby.
okay, yes. AJ Haynes again for the record. Yes, Mr. Byer, on page 58, that is it appears to be a true and accurate copy of the letter that Mr. Rusby sent the Board of County Commissioners in December.
And sorry, Mr. Haynes, and I'm sorry to cut you off, sir, but Mr. Haynes, you mentioned, I thought you had mentioned this was sent in relation to this property. This doesn't actually, the way I read this was about a group of VHR owners, correct? Not any specific property.
Correct. This was not in relation to a specific property. It was simply a letter from Attorney Rusby stating that in his opinion, the Fair Housing Act prevented the county from allowing children to be included in occupancy limits.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you.
It wasn't just to clarify, it wasn't a legal, order of any court or anything like that. It was just a letter from an attorney.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Burrows.
Okay. So, again, like I said, I don't want to, I'm not trying to take litigation or any of this. I really was hoping you guys would email me or something and say, hey, we don't have this opinion and let's discuss this. That's really what I was hoping with the whole situation. And well, let me back up a little bit. Because of that, I mean, as of now, I know you guys just submitted for the 2 strikes and you're out rule. But that wasn't in the current stipulation. And we weren't a danger to the community, and I get where you thought we were definitely pushing the limit, and we probably were. But the main reason behind that is technically the Fair Housing Act is a serious violation. I've been in the mortgage business 27 years. Fines can be up to $108,315. It is a federal regulation against discrimination. Now, I'm not going to try to sidestep and address the reason on why the situation occurred, which we've already discussed that. Occupancy limits and some of these regulations are and will destroy the Douglas County vacation rentals. It's already happening. As you guys already know, you're 25% down your permit holders. Our income and everyone I've talked to is down 50-70% in income. So that affects permit holders, that affects the taxes back to the Douglas County, everything in that whole thing. And it makes it almost next to impossible to pay for the mortgages, expenses, staff, taxes, etc. I'm not trying to use this as an excuse, but this is definitely a reason why we were approaching the Fair Housing Act system to try to at least bring up the income for these rentals. I'm not going to go fully into the full Fair Housing Act because there's no reason to go further into it. But we all know that it does state 18 and under does not count for rental and purchasing a home. Now, AJ was kind enough to send me a bunch of case law, which thank you for that. I will accept the fact that it does say dwelling as a single-family residence. So there's really no need to argue that point at this point. But I do know there's a National Heritage Foundation system that they are pushing a case together for the actual HUD itself to amend that to short-term vacation rentals. And the reason I believe that is happening because of the fact that you guys just voted not to have the 2 extra people per room. I mean, this kind of gets to the point where you have, and I know this makes sense to everybody, if you rent a 1-bedroom condo, you have 2 kids and they have pull-out couches, now you can't rent that property. Or even now with the new ordinance, you have a baby, 3-month-old, now you can't rent that property.
Mr. Burrows, just to be clear, the recommendations made by our board have not been approved by the county
Yes.
commissioners, so they're not new rules yet.
Yes, yeah, I'm just
Okay.
kind of making that comment. But even with the 2 per, so let's say they have a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and then a 3-month-old baby. You're forcing these people to rent a 2-bedroom or even a 3-bedroom, double and triple the price, which that's really the fundamental aspect of the Fair Housing Act. You can't push these families into paying more money for bigger homes and bigger systems. And I do want to touch a little bit on the minority aspect, because we do get a lot of Asian Americans and Mexican American families through our homes. And they do have a lot of children statistically. So it kind of runs back in that same situation. And there are attorneys now, and some of these groups, like BLM groups and these attorney ambulance chasers, they are sending letters. They haven't done it to me, but I've seen articles on it. They're sending letters to these people on demanding settlements or with risk of getting sued. And so I think this could be a liability not only to Douglas County down the road, and or all the hosts that you have if it's not addressed. And I do think it should be nipped in the bud before it is addressed down the road. That's just my personal opinion.
Mr. Burrows, I don't see how that's really relevant to this appeal hearing today, because this appeal hearing is about the revocation of your permit and advertising falsely for occupancy.
Well, that's the advertising is the reason why I put in there 10 adults plus children. So I think it's very relevant.
The discrimination part of it?
Mm-hmm. The Fair Housing Act,
Well,
that was in my advertising.
we can agree to disagree on that easily.
That was in my advertising.
Do you
that's fine.
have, no, I understand it was in your advertising, but that was not the part of the advertising that was incorrect. It was the number of people. The race, creed, or color of the people is not relevant or important to this body or Douglas County.
Okay. Understandable on that. So,
Do you have more comments to make
Yes, I do.
before we
Yeah.
go to public comment? Okay.
off track a little bit. So, yeah, I do want to bring up the case that just got voted on in Las Vegas. Greater Las Vegas Short-Term Rental Association, the Clark County and Clark County Commissioners, based on the violation of Article 1, Section 9 of the Nevada Constitution and the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. I don't know if you guys are aware of that one. I'm sure you are. So there's no need for me to go into the case law and everything else regarding that. The reason I bring that up, where it does apply to our rentals, and the reason for the advertising, we host many small weddings, which are, of course, religious. About 2 or 3 times a year, we host religious retreats with 12 plus children and a couple of chaperones. On numerous occasions, we've hosted college retreats for science groups, political groups, athletic teams. We've hosted Boy Scouts, Girl Scout troops. We host quite a bit to the Fallon Naval Air Force soldiers, firemen, and police groups throughout the nation and locally, all of which are very respectful groups. None of them are partiers, and they treat our home with respect and the neighborhood with respect. So I do also want to point out that advertising for these types of groups are protected under commercial free speech under the First Amendment as well, considering our advertising. So basically forcing us to violate the Nevada and U.S. Constitution and potential violations of the Fair Housing Act brings me to my next legal issue. The Supremacy Clause of the Constitution of the United States, Article 6, Clause 2, establishes that the Constitution, federal laws made pursuant to it, and treaties made under its authority constitute the supreme law of the land, and must take priority over any conflicting state or local laws. It provides that state and local courts are bound by the supreme law and must subordinate to it. I know it's not even your guys' intention of discriminating legally. I mean, we all pretty much can agree to that. But you kind of understand why some of these ordinances are written to put license holders and the county and the VHR board in a difficult position, trying to explain ourselves legally and, potentially racking up very expensive legal fees if this stuff does come at us. So I do want to point out, there's no really need to go through a lot of this, that I do agree with a lot of these ordinances. The noise monitors, I completely agree, coming up the chain. You know, different things like videos from the neighbors, to, you know, if there is noise. But the fact of the matter remains, we've never had a noise complaint. Well, up to 2 weeks ago, but we'll address that in a separate situation. You know, we've been very good renters and hosts. Me and my wife work hard. We're very into our rentals. I guarantee you we monitor and take care of our rentals better than any property management company ever would. I would like you to meet Robert Wood. He's our main maintenance guy. He was the Lakeside manager and engineer for years. We took him on when Lakeside closed, and he's been great for us. Shannon Spivaks, they both were born and raised in Lake Tahoe. And she's worked for Heavenly and many local places. We actually met during bowling about 15 years ago and been great friends ever since. So what I'm trying to get at is the revocation of our permits over 2 advertising violations. As I know we were pushing it, I completely understand your position in that. I just feel like it's pretty harsh based on what we've done. I didn't get a chance to even try to commit to it or or go to that level of fixing it. So I do believe the immediate revocation was a little harsh on that regard. We really didn't cause any noise or anything, but I would like to say that me and my wife very much would like the opportunity to have our permits restored, so we continue being a valid member of the local community, provide local jobs, and not sell our homes. As I can assure you, and you have my word, we will follow all the regulations as currently listed without deviating from them. We do apologize for trying to work out creative ways to sustain our business. Even though we felt they were just, we completely understand and follow the current laws and regulations as they are proposed. Now, you do have our word on that. And I want to thank everyone for their time. But like I said, I also think, I wanted to get back to I think I could be a great help to your community. I really do.
Well,
on a
we're
lot of
not the one
aspects.
you should be lobbying. Thank you for your statement. I'm going to ask you to sit down for now while we
Okay.
take public comment, and then I'll bring it back to the board for more discussion.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Would you like Mr. Burrows to sign in
Oh,
before
yeah,
I-
when next time you come up, I need you to sign the sheet for the minutes.
Checking.
Leave
I'll
him a
leave space between
Yeah,
my
leave
name.
him a space. Thank you. I wrote it down but didn't say it then.
Ellie Weller, thank you, Advisory Board. I come to most of these meetings, most everyone. I've met a lot of kind people that have come before you, and Mr. Burrows is no exception. I appreciate everything Mr. Burrows has done for the community. My statement to you, it would be, with all the nonprofits that Mr. Burrows runs, there's rules, and especially with a 501c3, and none of those can be violated either. And I find that it's hard for people to understand a rule is written, a rule is followed, and yes, there is the appeal process that I think I've sat through many of these, has been fair and just, and no disrespect to the applicant for the appeal on this one right now. I still think it needs to stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Any other public comment regarding this agenda item? Please write your name and state your name. Keith, are you hearing all this?
Oh, yeah, I am, yep,
Okay, just want to double check.
yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the advisory board. My name is Nanette Hansel, and I have owned the home at 258 North Benjamin since 2002. We have been full-time, year-round residents since that time, and I am far from a retiree. I work full-time here in the Basin and have been at the same firm at 128 Market Street since 2010. In my spare time, I serve as the chair for the Douglas County Parks and Rec Advisory Board and as a board member and treasurer for the Lake Tahoe Bicycle Coalition. My 2 children were born and raised here and currently attend Whittle High School. Our 3-bedroom, 2-bath home has an occupancy of 4 people and 1 small dog. I am here today to offer my support for staff's recommendation to revoke the VHR permit for 256 North Benjamin. By being here today, I stand only to gain a peaceful home life again. When we purchased our home, the county's VHR program did not exist. Instead, the home at 256 North Benjamin was owned by a family. The house at 256 North Benjamin is now a party house for vacationers. It's a beautiful, large home, and it's shameful that Mr. Burrows operates it in violation of his VHR permit. The house could easily accommodate the 20 to 40 people as he advertises it on VRBO and Airbnb, but that's not what is permitted. He's permitted to have up to 10 occupants and 7 parked cars. I ask this board to support staff and follow the direction of the county commissioners as stated at their October 13th, 2022 meeting. Commissioners made it clear that it was their intent to operate a VHR program that blended with the surrounding neighborhood and rid the program of bad apples. Commissioner Tarkanian stated, quote, "It's our responsibility to make it more painful when you violate the ordinance. People are going to break laws they don't believe in," end quote. Commissioner Noasad stated, "You mess up once, you get a fine. Mess up twice, no. If you mess up a second time, your permit is pulled. We need to get to a point where the owner of VHR takes responsibility," end quote. Commissioner Engels stated, quote, "We're going to come down on them real hard because if they don't comply, they're done," end quote. I have filed several complaints through the county's VHR complaint system regarding noise, the number of people at the home, and parking exceeding the permitted capacity. During summer months, this property is rented daily with nuisance noise and parking spilling onto residential streets being a regular occurrence. The parties start early and run late. My son, 13-year-old son's bedroom is a little over 20 feet from the outdoor party area, and there have been countless times when he can't sleep due to the noise next door. Last year, we purchased a megaphone so that we could kindly ask party goers to keep it down from his window. We don't have a fenced yard, so we've dealt with trespassing too. We've experienced people peeping into my 16-year-old daughter's bedroom, and we've had people attempt to crawl into our crawl space at the back end of the house.
I'm sorry, I didn't give you your 30-second thing because I
Okay,
was listening and I
have like
didn't
30
want to.
seconds more at most.
That's up to
Will
you.
the board
Yeah,
entertain?
go ahead.
Our driveway sits 225 feet away from the driveway at 256 North Benjamin, yet we have had the driveway blocked by visitors at their property. At an average length of 15 feet per car, that's an additional 15 cars beyond the 7 that are already permitted. That's 22 parked cars. I sent documentation of violations by email this morning to this board and Mr. Strelo. Please take action to revoke this VHR permit and restore peace to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment regarding this item number? Well, no, actually. Okay, I'm gonna bring it back to the board.
Madam Chair.
What?
No.
What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay, okay, then bring it back to the board for further discussion. Keith, any comments?
Yes, I don't know what the fair housing ordinance says. I'm not an attorney. I know that I rent an apartment in Miami where I am right now, and it's a limitation of 4 people, 2 per bedroom. Doesn't mention kids, both my kids are older, doesn't mention kids, doesn't mention anything else, but there was a capacity limit in the lease I signed from the National Realtor Association. And so I believe that we should uphold the code, and if there is a problem with the legality of the code, in the litigation or anything about that legality, this would be overturned at that time. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not a lawyer. I go by the code. It's not my job to determine if the code is legal. It's to determine if there was a violation. And I believe there was an egregious violation. There was a repeated violation. And there was a statement about making as much money as I could. There was a statement of, and again, I feel for people, trying to make mortgage payments and everything else. These are income producing properties. They are a business. And when those are hurt, I definitely understand the pull to try to get as much money as they possibly can. But I'm in favor of following the county's recommendation of $1,000 fine and the revocation of the permit.
Thank you, Keith. Lauren?
Yeah, same type of thing as far as, I understand if you had questions about the first fine that you got and the legality of those. And I understand where you're saying that you'd like the county to have come to you with the questions about it, but I just don't, that's not the way it works. I think if you had a question about the legality of what they were telling you needed to do, which you paid the fine for the first time, that in order to protect yourself, you had the obligation to come to the county with your questions and concerns about what was legal and what was not legal. And just going about advertising the way you did was in violation of the ordinance. So I'm also in favor of upholding.
Thank you, Lauren. And I kind of made my position clear earlier. Business models sometimes fail. The economy changes, the stock market goes down, and we have an investment of some sort, be it a VHR or a stock, we sometimes lose money, or we have to modify. And I look at this as the same thing as any other investment. So I'm kind of inclined to agree with that. I'd be looking for a motion, and if you'll look on page 44, so we get this really right.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move that we affirm the decision of the county upholding the $1,000 fine and the permit revocation issued to Ken Burrows. And because there are two, I'll just add at 256 North Benjamin Drive, State Line, Nevada, just to make it clear that I have not, I don't know the difference between this case and the first. I want to limit that affirmation to only 265 North Benjamin at this time.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Sensing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, so that's 3-0. Let's move on to item number 2. For possible action, discussion on an appeal filed by 692 Kingsbury Grade LLC, Kenneth and Sally Burrows, owner of 692 Kingsbury Grade, State Line, Nevada, 89449, PN 131919310002, VHR permit 8400400, contesting the revocation of the VHR permit and the imposition of the $1,000 fine for advertising and occupancy that exceeds the permitted occupancy limit of 10. Code enforcement case number 22-000330. Mr. Strelo, had to count zeros.
Ernie Strelo for the record. I'll skip that preamble. Go
Oh,
through that.
I was gonna tell you that I didn't think you needed to do
I
that
don't see, I'm
again.
ready to read that again.
So it's,
On or about October 27, 2022, the Douglas County VHR program staff became aware that Mr. Burrows was advertising an occupancy on this address that exceeded the permitted occupancy of 10. Specifically, he had posted advertisements on vrbo.com listing an occupancy of 20, and he had posted advertisements on Airbnb.com listing an occupancy of 16. Douglas County issued a notice of violation, assessing Mr. Burrows a fine of $1,000 and ordering him to correct the violation. In compliance with the notice of violation, Mr. Burrows did revise his advertisements. Additionally, on or about January 10th, 2023, Mr. Burrows paid the fine of $1,000. However, on or about January 22nd, 2023, less than 2 weeks after paying his fine for the first violation, Mr. Burrows again began advertising an occupancy that exceeded the occupancy limit. Specifically, he listed the property on Airbnb with an advertised occupancy of 16 plus, and a copy of the advertisement is in Exhibit 1. Within the body of the advertisement, Mr. Burrows wrote, "Home sleeps 10 adults plus children per Fair Housing Act, 18 and under don't count." So similar to the previous one. On or about January 31st, 2023, Douglas County issued a second notice of violation to Mr. Burrows, again assessing a fine of $1,000 for advertising and operating above his permitted occupancy limits. Additionally, because this was a second offense within a shorter period of time, Douglas County elected to revoke Mr. Burrows' VHR permit for this address. Mr. Burrows filed an appeal on February 1st of 2023. In his appeal, he maintains he was allowed to advertise an occupancy above 10 because children 18 and under do not count. I'm not going to read all this section, but a $1,000 fine and revocation were justified because Mr. Burrows openly violated the occupancy limitations of the ordinance. And number 2, children are not exempt from the occupancy limits of a VHR permit or VHR ordinance. And there's discussion that repeats from the previous one about the Fair Housing Act. In addition, this particular address, this had another violation after the appeal was filed, and it's still an ongoing investigation. So take it for what it's worth at this point, but we do have a sheriff report on this one. On 2/19/2023, so February 19th at 12:30 in the morning, Tahoe Douglas Fire was dispatched to 692 Kingsbury Grade for a fire alarm activation. Upon arrival, they observed what they believed was a juvenile party. They counted approximately 60 people present at the residence. They noted several people, including juveniles, were consuming alcohol. A short time later, deputies from the DCSO were dispatched to the scene. Upon arrival, they noted 12 vehicles parked in the driveway. Again, this is 12:30 at night. From outside the residence, they could hear music and yelling. They knocked on the door, the sheriffs knocked on the door and were greeted by 2 individuals who immediately apologized for the noise. The deputies asked to speak with the person responsible for the rental. There was Rohan Kandawal, who's age 20, that came to the door, and he stated that he was the responsible party for renting the property. Inside the residence, deputies found several individuals under age 21 and were intoxicated. They also noted that there were people sleeping on an air mattress in the common area. Again, this is an open investigation, so this is a new code violation. But it's important to note, being that this is going through an appeal process, that this is going on. So with that, I will close. I will hand it off to you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Strelo. Let's do our standing vote first. I'm under the impression you've checked that 692 Kingsbury LLC belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Burrows, so that...
Ernie Strela, for the record, yes. And I will also note, it was previously noted that there was not a notification on either address, the previous one that you already voted on and this one, that there was no warning letter sent, and we do send a warning letter before we fine. So there was a warning letter, then there was a fine violation, and a second fine violation, just so we're clear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion regarding standing?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move that we find the appellant of 692 Kingsbury Grade was aggrieved by the $1,000 fine and permit and has standing appeal.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, let's bring Mr. Burrows up.
Oh, yeah, I guess there's really no reason to go into, I guess, that property along with the other ones, and I know you guys are gonna vote, but regarding the February 19th circumstance, that was a friend of mine's kid that I let stay there with a bunch of his friends. I didn't realize it got to that level. I do know because they texted me at 12:30 at night, or no, I got the notification from the actually fire department. So I texted him twice, he didn't respond to me. That morning, texted him again. Got the information. He said, "Oh, the fire alarm went off." He never mentioned anything about police at all. So I didn't find that out till I got the fine system. So I think it's a little I don't know if they had exactly 60 people there, but it even matters at this point. I did
Mr.
get,
Burrows, do you live up at the lake, up here somewhere?
we actually live right down in Gardnerville, or
Oh,
on
okay,
the
so
south end
but
of
you live in
Gardnerville.
Douglas County somewhere?
Right now, we are staying at the, in Woodford's, one of our other homes.
I
Yeah, right there.
don't need to know exactly where, I was just curious whether you lived in the
Yes.
vicinity of your rental homes.
Yes.
Thank you, sorry to interrupt, go
So,
ahead.
yeah, I mean, no reason to go too much into the whatever the numbers are, but it did originally get triggered from the fire thing going off. Then I think the fire department decided, well, there's some young kids in here, and then they called the police and they came and ID'd a few of them, some of them were under 21, so. That's what happened there. We did get him to pay $4,000 to me, so I'm not gonna contest the fine or any of the issues. We're just gonna pay the fine and be done with it, so.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just to clarify that, what the county elected to do is they treated Mr. Burrows as if he still had the permit, rather than assessing a $20,000 fine for renting without a permit. Because this appeal was still pending, the county elected to treat that as if the permit was active, and so he was assessed a $1,000 fine per violation. I think the violations were renting to someone under 25, noise, occupancy, and parking. I think if I'm remembering that
Yeah,
correctly.
one comment, I mean, even though it doesn't matter at this point, that
Or-
probably wouldn't have happened if we were renting the house and we didn't just let our friends' kids come up there.
So you were letting some friends?
Letting some friends' kids
use
come
the
up, and I
house.
didn't realize he was gonna have his, I just thought it was him and a few friends, so. I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, like I said, parents made him pay the fine. So that's the end of that.
Oh, boy. Lauren, do you have any questions for Mr. Burrows?
I mean, I understand that that violation is not really part of this discussion.
Right.
To-
Right, it was just that there's, I mean, I'm assuming it's just information we
Right.
should have,
Yeah,
that there
sure, no,
was
no,
now a
yep.
third
Right. Yeah.
violation.
Yeah.
Keith?
No, Lauren asked my other question. I mean, I understand the seriousness of it, but I'm going to ignore the party after the revocation of his permit. If the county wanted to go into, the rental things and see if that would be for another action as far as I'm concerned. This was, so I'm going to ignore that, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any
ma'am.
questions or comments regarding the occupancy and the violations and the revocation?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you don't have any either? I think it's pretty straightforward, just like, I had a question on one of your advertisements. It says properties up to 40-person occupancy. Can I assume that's not these two that you have up at the
No,
lake?
we have 2 properties down in Woodford's.
Okay. And I'm trying to see if I had any other questions. I do not. Okay. Then I will ask for public comment. Oh, Ernie, did you have something?
No, I was making sure you remembered.
Mr. Burrows, could you come sign in
Oh.
before me again? I left you a spot.
He really wasn't here.
It takes a village to keep
Oh,
me in
You
control.
spoke twice. It's a weird thing. You see my name on there yet, just so, sometimes it's hard for the recordings.
Well, for the minutes, they need to know who is actually speaking.
Hi, Ellie Waller for the record. This is a very unusual circumstance with 2 properties, same owner, same violation. I look at it in a perspective of which, because it's unusual, it's a cumulative impacts of things. And with one violation assessed with a rule, that should have triggered, don't do this on another one. I think it should stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other public comment regarding item number 2? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back here to the board.
Madam Chair, I'm ready. I don't know if Lauren wanted to say something, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. No, go ahead, Keith.
Madam Chair, I move we affirm the decision of the county upholding the $1,000 fine and permit revocation issued to 692 Kingsbury Grade LLC.
Thank you, Keith. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Aye.
3-0. I take no pleasure in this, I hope you know. I don't think any of us do.
No.
And that takes care of item number 2. And that takes us to the end of our agenda, unless
That's it.
that's it, right?
That's it. You just have closing public comment.
Okay. All right. Any closing public comment?
Regarding our neighbor, that was the first we've heard of that. So,
The what?
the first we've heard of her having problems with that, so, and I just said I'm sorry, because we did not know any of that was going on.
I need you to sign your name
Huh?
again.
Oh, sign back in? So, she said she's given a lot of complaints, so I guess why wasn't that coming to us somehow? I guess that's just one question for the board, if that wasn't going through the system.
I would say Mr. Strelo can answer that better than we can. We are not in the back office.
Ernest Strillo, for the record, I don't have access to my Citizen Serve tool, so I can, otherwise I can look it up, but I don't know if there's been,
Yeah, we weren't
we
getting
can
any
check for you, I can
notices,
see
or
what,
she wasn't even letting us know that.
I can send you a report. It's-
All of them that she called in, that'd be great.
Well, there was one time we had a Halloween party that she did come in the house. We talked to her. Hey, this is me, and that did happen. But I didn't know everything else was going on. I just want to get that
Okay.
because that I think that's a concern if other neighbors were.
You have to understand that it's really difficult for neighbors to make things official. And a lot of them sit and just put up with,
Stew on it.
and put up with, and put up with. And so it is something that maybe we need to work on a little bit more in some way to get people to feel more comfortable in
Right.
saying it.
Yeah.
But it tends to be the issue. And so therefore, the management of these things, you just have to be so much on it, because it happens.
Yeah, that makes me feel terrible. I heard her even say.
I know.
We didn't
You know,
have
to add to that, Ernest Strelo, for the record, you know, I've been, you know, I mentioned that a couple days ago at the planning commission, I've taken on call for code enforcement for a couple months. Not for in a row, but a couple weekends. And people that have called in on code enforcement did, you know, that I wasn't quite sure what the code complaint was about. I'll call the person that called. And a lot of times people don't know to call the sheriff, you know, on a noise complaint, they'll call the code line. And, you know, really what they want to hear is directly from the complaining. They won't let us transfer information to the sheriff's department. So, you know, really it's a lot of VHRs, if it's noise or parking stuff, it's just they have to call the sheriff. That's just how it has to happen. And then you get a documented report out of it. We get a documented report out of it, and we can do something with it. And it just may be according, you know, as Assistant Chair Lauren Romaine said, is, you know, we talked about some people just don't know to call. It's just kind of an education piece for us. You know, we're trying to get that out. So, but in your particular case, I can look it up and figure out what's been going on, if it's been recorded or not.
Is there any other closing public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Keith.
See ya.
And
Enjoy
by the way, the
Florida.
sound was fantastic. Whoever bought that device was amazingly intelligent.
He
It
was.
was like I was in the room.
You know, it's this guy at Beach Club that keeps buying us.
They,